Good evening. I'm
welcome back.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry I missed last week. I was sad to miss last week because it was the anniversary or something last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, the Atari. So, you're a big fan of the Atari?
Well, I used to be part of the Atari user group, and one of my claims to fame was I used to have an article which had been published in Personal Computer World was actually listed in the Science Museum. Is what they had these things in the Science Museum where they had magazines on display, and it used to be open on the page of an article I'd written about the Atari 400. Well, this year it was a bit of code I'd written for the Atari 400, which led to this absolutely hilarious thing where a party of Japanese school children found out that I was the author of this article and wanted their pictures taken with me. But that was good. And what I really wanted to talk about was the thing you've just bunged on the screen now. The Atari 8-bit is still alive and well. This Atari project site has been doing some sterling stuff on actually upgrading and improving. And the latest article that I was reading on, there was how that they've actually done an upgrade for the video board to make it work in super compensate. But it was great. There's all sorts of things in there which are just amazing to see this stuff still going. Sadly, my Atari went to my nephew, and I don't think it lasted very long. but it was a great bit of kit, and of course then went on to the Atari ST, and we all know about the MIDI output on that and how musicians loved that. And you found a video on that, didn't you?
Yeah. So actually, this is I thought it was an old video, but I suppose technically it is, but it's actually a recent post. The BBC have got their sort of archives to the BBC archives, it's called, and older listeners of our age will remember BBC Micro Live. Yeah. And I won't put the sound on, but I'll put a quick clip of the video. But this is a clip. It was only uploaded a couple of days ago, on Saturday, I think, of on BBC Micro Live of the Atari ST being demonstrated, linked up to an Ensoniq synthesizer, and Fred Harris, looking very dapper in his shirt and tie, showing how, and this guy there, I don't know the guy's name, they don't mention his name, I don't think, but showing how you can link your Atari ST to an Ensoniq synthesizer or any MIDI synthesizer, and it's a full recording studio that it was. I'm not sure the exact software. It doesn't look like Cubase, but it's that. It wasn't even called Cubase. It was Pro 16, I think it might be. Yeah.
One of the Steinberg ones by looks of things, but it's difficult to tell.
Yeah. But anyway, the video goes on, and it's actually quite a detailed demonstration of. It's Pro 24. I can see it there in the title, which is Steinberg, which is Cubase that I still use you've been using today, and that descends from this one. And it's amazing. It shows you how MIDI works and everything else, and really entertaining, informative programs those BBC Micro Lives were at the time. And so they go into detail. So I'll include a link anyway about that, and it really just shows exactly how it works. But also there's a segment, Leslie Judd, showing you how to use it with the Commodore 64, a cheaper one. And the thing that they mention on there is the cheater interface. They mentioned about the cheater interface and for the Spectrum. And that's it connected up with a Casio CZ101 and a Spectrum Plus 2 by the looks of it. And do you remember that Cheetah actually they've actually made a really good synthesizer, an analog synthesizer, Cheetah, as well as a keyboard, a MIDI keyboard, and that they were really quite good at the I think it was the MKS or something like that. The synthesizer that they have were actually really good, and I don't know what happened to them eventually. Whether, but there's the MK5, the Cheetah MK5, which was a remote MIDI keyboard. Anyway. Yeah. Really good explanation. Oh, and then even Fred Ash goes into a bit of composing on a BBC Micro with using some kind of weird program language, a music syntax language. He said it's a bit like Forth. So there you go. So just as everybody's familiar with Forth nowadays. But it's good. It shows you, for various amounts of money, you can use your BBC Micro, your Spectrum, or your Posh ST if you've got one of those to do music. And of course, the ST went on to be the sort of staple of recording studios, and only really the last, well, so I don't know, maybe last 20 years, I suppose. So the last 10 years, perhaps, it's been replaced. Last 20 years, but I think we watched that interview with the guy that did the James Bond music. Oh no, I'm just gonna forget his name now. But he was using, up until recently, he was using his Atari ST. And he donated it to the Jason Fitzpatrick at the Computer Museum. So he donated his Atari ST. So yeah, there's a great amount of resource on this BBC archive if you're interested in that kind of thing. There's all sorts of clips on there. I think you can spend hours going through there. There's Wogan, and there's lots of computer ones from Micro Live and that kind of thing. There's some there's a lot of things that any retro fans of retro computing or will be interested in, but there's also things of clips of Tomorrow's World are on there and all sorts. So I'm sure lots of people have seen these, but anyway, it's a good resource. It's something that you can end up going down a bit of a rabbit hole watching Tomorrow's World clips from the 1970s. They are fascinating. So yeah, so have a look at those. They're really interesting, and I find those fascinating, especially the old computer stuff. And there's a bit of a resurgence in people using analog synthesizers and stuff. I mean, for the last 30 odd 20 odd years there's been that, but now people are going back to using Atari STs as well with Roland sound cards and that kind of thing to get that sort of 16-bit Sound Blaster sound of 90s games, think Doom and all that kind of thing. So yeah, but these things they go through cycles, don't they? And now they're definitely retro. So you can go for your Atari 8-bit, or you can go a bit more recently with the 16-bit ones. And I actually saw I was in a shop the other day, and they actually had that Commodore 64 micro computer. The one that they brought out fairly recently as well. So it's a little scaled down Commodore 64. So that's quite good. Yes, but lots of fun with retro computers. So I still enjoy mine. It's funny, isn't it? That it's just like with the synthesizers I've got. Well, one there down behind me is 20 years old, and that's one of my new ones. And there's one that's a lot older. But yeah, it's like there's a nostalgia as well as the sound and that make these things interesting. But yeah, retro computing combined with retro music is fantastic. Now a bit more modern, up to date. We did get some builds last week. We had a couple of things. So we got 25151 for Windows Insiders on the dev channel. I don't know if you've even got as far as, have you got up to testing any dev builds yet?
Oh, I'm trying to get a laptop set up for that. I'm actually having to replace one of my laptops, and it's going to go to Windows 11. It's going to go to the dev builds, and it's going to stuff, but not there yet.
Yeah, this one there was not a lot in it. It's all fixes, scaling issues and apps crashing and things like that. So there was hardly anything in the build last week. These builds have been, I find them pretty good, pretty solid. There's no major issues. I've got it on my Surface Go. It works fine. You may find that, depending on your model, whether you can get 22H2, because I think the 22H2 is not going to ship to everybody if you've kind of forced Windows 11 onto your machine. If it was if you were able to upgrade it without any issues, then it'll work. But if you did a bit of registry hacking to get your build on, you might have to do that again to get 22H2 on. I think I know Microsoft explicitly said, but they don't support Windows 11 on this older hardware ever. So if you have managed to get Windows 11 on older hardware like I did, I think you're gonna have to do something to get if you're not already on the dev channel, because my Surface Go is on the dev channel already and it's just carried on getting builds. So, but I know that if I did a clean install of Windows 11, it wouldn't I don't think it would allow 22H2 on there without a bit of work on it. 'Cause one of my VMs hasn't got it. Actually, that's strange. Actually, I've got a VM that thinks it's not compatible, but it's got 4 gig of RAM, 4 processors, TPM enabled. I'm not quite sure what else it wants really, but anyways, yeah. So I've got one VM that's not taking the build, but again, you'll be able to put those. You can do it if you really need to. But yeah, so that build wasn't very much in it this week, so it's been fairly quiet on the build front really. Last few weeks, these builds have been not a huge amount of features in it. Although I think the tabbed file explorer is coming onto more devices now, but that's actually on the beta channel anyway, so you could well have that if you're on beta. I think release preview did get an update last week, 22621.169, and that 22631 is the build that's going to go out later this year. We still don't know when 22H2 will ship. I know you can see people asking, but it's always when Microsoft think it's ready, I suppose. My guess is around still September time, something like that. It could be before, it could be after, and then we'll get 22H2 out, and then hopefully we'll start to see some new features. Whether we'll get the tab browsing, I'm still not sure whether that's going to actually ship in 22H2 yet. But it could do.
It could do, yeah. I mean, it's still up in the air a bit, isn't it? But yeah, I'd like to see it ship.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. It's really nice. Once you get used to it, it's a much better way of working than having multiple windows open, especially with the drag and drop between tabs as well. So I think that's always really nice. So I'm glad that that's coming. Just there's not, for Windows Insiders, there's not been a huge amount to test recently. Now, what I have been testing, I think we mentioned it. I don't know if I mentioned last week or the week before. You know, my LED light strip, which which I've had various projects. I mean, it's great. I'm getting my money's worth out of it. I think it was last week I mentioned it because it's actually powered by the same chip as the new Raspberry Pi Pico, the wireless one that we talked about last week. But anyway, I've had this various things with this because it's USB-C, MicroPython. You can control all the lights. They're addressable individually and that kind of thing. So I've done things on here. The last project I did was controlling it from Windows. So I wrote the application. So the way that I did that was I wrote the Windows application that pushes the MicroPython code line at a time down to the board and flashes it. So my Windows program maybe wants to light all the lights up, so I do the actual the MicroPython code, you know, the LED open brackets, whatever, and it sends it down the serial port to this, and it lights up. But one thing I was thinking of is whether I could do something with Midi with it. And so what I was playing with this week was, I'm sure there must be some .NET framework component out there that can talk to Midi, and I've got. Oh, I can show you that. I've got a USB. No, it's not connected up. I've got a couple actually. USB MIDI controllers. You saw the type you plug in, and then they've got an input and output, which is connected up to the keyboards. I did manage to find on GitHub a MIDI library. There's a few actually, but I found one that seemed that I could understand how it works. That's the hardest part, and then I managed to incorporate some of that into my light controller application, so I could read MIDI. So the next step was to write it back to the light strip, and I did get it to work. It's not anywhere finished yet, but it basically works. I was able to read the MIDI port, I was able to read the device name, and I was able to read note on, note off information. So when you press a key on the keyboard or the synthesizer, that's note on. You take your hand off, that's note off. And I was also able to read the velocity, so how hard you hit the key. So I've got that information, and then I can send down the serial port, the code, the MicroPython code, to make the lights come on. So you hit a key with low velocity, it goes red. You hit it with high velocity, it goes white. You release the keys, the lights go off. So you could mount this light strip around your keyboard rig somewhere, and as you'll start playing, this is going to change in time with your playing. That's the theory. It kind of works. The issue that I've got at the moment is it's actually quite slow, because basically my program, if you want all these lights to go on here, they're addressable one at a time. So that's 128 whatever things you've got to address, and you have to write that code in my program in Windows, send that down the serial port, it runs that code. So to get all the lights on is actually not as fast as the MIDI information. So MIDI information is very fast. You're playing a lot of keys, there's a lot of information, and of course you're just sending down this constant serial thing to this code, and eventually it kind of buffer overflows, or at least I've put some error code in there so it doesn't crash it, but it just discard it. So it's not 100% reliable. So if you're playing quite slow, this is in perfect time. But as soon as you start going a bit faster, it's out of time. But in theory, it's possible. It's possible. So maybe if I can find a way of, instead of transmitting the Python code down, I can just receive like a note on, note off, or a small byte type, to turn the lights on and off. That would be better. So I'd rewrite the code on here. It takes away some of the flexibility from the Windows side, but it means that I don't have to send as much, because theoretically with the with MIDI, there's MIDI time code. All my gear is synced together from a central clock, so you could have the lights flash in time, which actually would be quite handy when you're recording, because I always use a metronome in the ear if I'm recording. And it would be quite nice to have visual indication. So that's possible, but certainly note off, note on. So it would look very Jean-Michel Jarre.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
As you play, yeah. So a bit more work to do on it, but in theory, it's all possible. The MIDI interface is there, and actually, that opens up the possibility of doing other things with smart home if you can with web interfaces. So maybe you can control your Philips Hue lights with the synthesizer. So I've got a light up there, a bulb up there, and I can control that, sending control signals from the synthesizer. So if you hit a certain key, it flashes that light, or you hit a certain other key, the blind shut. I don't know. It's all possible, because you once you've got that MIDI information, you've got there's a world of possibilities you can do with it. And it would be great if I could natively control this light strip from Windows, but I'm really not sure how I do that. You have to go through a controller, and that's where it slows down then, because you're going over the serial bus.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's different ways around doing it, but it's quite a fun thing to do. I spent quite a time fiddling about when I eventually ran the program, pressed a key, it lit up. It's alive. Yeah, that was good fun. So these projects are good fun, and I'm sure there's probably somebody's done this kind of thing already, but it's not so much to get the finished job, it's getting the
it's getting there. It's the journey, isn't it? It's definitely the journey. That's what scaling's all about.
And MicroPython code is actually quite fun and easy to do, but I found it easier to do it in Windows and send that. Basically I'm making my program in the Windows is writing Python code that sends down and then executes it. And I don't think that's the best way of doing it, but it works, and it was quite, and it means that the Windows program could do other things as well. So quite enjoyed doing that. So I think I'm going to do a bit more work on it, and then then I'll get some videos of it. I posted a clip on Twitter of it, because when I eventually got it working, yes, I'll do a video clip how it works. But that's the nice thing about these projects and these boards and things like that. You're not spending a huge amount of money to be able to come up with things like that. I'm sure actually you could probably use a Raspberry Pi. I mean, you might even be able to go native, but I don't know whether you can get a MIDI controller with drivers and things to work natively to this. It's probably asking a bit much. Maybe if you've got a Raspberry Pi 4, maybe you could go native and do it that way. I don't know, but anyway, I like doing it with Windows because it's just a bit easier for me to do things. So, yeah. Anyway, so that's my fun project. I quite enjoyed doing that. I still think Richard needs to get on and do his tube map, which he mentioned.
Yeah, they ought to be doing that.
Yeah. So that was a fun project that I've been working on. Have you got any smart home projects you've been working on recently?
Nothing particularly specific. I mean, I'm doing some AI on some of the cameras to detect movement and tracking people a bit better. There's a whole new AI system that's public available. And I can't actually just trying to remember what it's called. Actually, I'll look that up just so I can tell people. But basically, it allows you to run a whole AI processor locally on a server or things. I've actually got it running on my camera server. And then you can do things like facial recognition and loads more as well. Actually, it just doesn't just do the sort of the standard type stuff you do. I mean, obviously, I want it for people recognition and facial, so I don't get quite so many false alerts on cameras. But this also allows things like actual facial recognition, so you can detect people, check to see who's visiting you. So you might want to say, if someone comes up the path and I know who they are, don't tell me if they're part of the family. But if someone comes up the path who's not in the family, then tell me. And you can do things like that. Other things you can do is it will do number plate recognition. So you can check what number plates come up on your drive and see if it's a car you know about. So you can do, and then you could use that to trigger other things as well. So, for example, one thing I looked at was that when I get home, it knows it's me. It starts turning, and and nobody else is home. It starts turning the lights on. So the outside lights are on always if in that situation. So I have enough light to see who I am. Well, I guess it would work on the infrared as well. But then if someone else turns up, it doesn't do that. Or if someone turns out you don't know, you can start turning lights on randomly at night, so it looks like someone's home, even though there's not. To deter a thief potentially, because they reckon that's actually one of the biggest deterrents. Against if they think someone's home, they won't try to break in. So I think it's certainly a lot of possibilities. So I'm just trying. I'm still waiting to get connection to my server to tell you what it is. Usual problem. Once you've got Teams running, nothing else seems to want to run very quickly.
Rich is not here to complain about Teams this week.
Yeah, it's my turn this week.
Yeah.
Okay, see if I can remember what this is called, because I've completely blanked on what it's actually called, but it's really good. See.
Oh, and I just remembered David Arnold was the the musician that did the Bond themes and donated his computer.
Yeah. So it's called the Sense AI service.
Right,
which is it's on Code Project. It's and it's all free, public domain, and incredibly easy to use.
And what do you run that on?
It runs on Windows. It'll run on Linux. It's good. There's loads of various options for it. And I was just trying to, if I could fire it up, I've just got it on my server, and it's not actually running at the moment because I was in the middle of configuring some of it. But if I could just start it up,
What's it called? Sense AI.
Sense AI, yeah. It's Code Project. For some reason, I must have broken the configuration because it's not one wanting to run. But it's actually it's a Code Project project, and that's. Let me share my screen if I can get that to work. Actually, that'd be feasible.
Thinking about it.
There we go. Definitely on a go slow tonight. There you
go.
Yeah, so that's the Code AI project. And you see it does a lot of stuff. So it's and you can actually use it. It's a RESTful API. You can do all sorts of things with it. And it fixing. There's a few bits of software already supporting it. So the Blue Iris server I use actually works with it quite happily. Let's see if I actually connect to it now. Maybe not. No, it's still refusing to start. Oh, I'll have to reboot and set it up and make sure. But it's got a whole load of options and things you can actually do with it. And you see there's big API reference you can actually call from it. So if you know what you're doing, you can do all sorts of things like background removing.
Oh yeah.
As an example, and you do custom scene classifying, face detection, text, which is how you can do your number plate recognition.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, that's good. If you could use that to read things.
Yeah. So you got a whole load of options in there. A custom option object detection is quite good as well. I mean, you. So one thing I was looking at was that sometimes we've got a trampoline in the back garden, and there's always a slight concern it's going to get picked up by the wind. So I was actually going to do a custom object detector for the trampoline and say it has to be in this place, and if it moves from that place, then tell me. So yeah, that was one thing I was looking at as well. So there's a whole raft of things you can actually do with it, which is really good. I mean, I'm quite sure how I'm going to use the background remover on my video camera, but sure there are times when you definitely want to do
that. That's quite interesting. And so you could use it to check on things and, like I say, maintain. And I suppose like if you've got a house, then you don't get a huge amount of people coming to the door. But if you've got a flat that's on or even a house on a busy road or something like that, where you've got a lot of people walking past and you've got a lot of false positives, you can put some intelligence in there to help with that.
Yeah, you can. Yes,
and that's local running code as well.
It is, yeah. So it's a shame I've broken it at the moment, but if otherwise I'd show you. But it just runs in the background, and you get a browser link to it, and you can actually open it up and run it, and then it just plugs in. As I say, it plugs into Blue Iris, and I can actually get alerts for Blue Iris to say what's in an image and run code on it. And it does. I can do things like, say, if someone walks up the drive, I can get it to give me an alert. If then someone I know, so it's quite nice. Works really well.
Yeah,
and it has cut down the false positives greatly.
Yeah, because I use the Arlo cameras, and they have a service like that, but you've got to pay for it as part of the subscription. And these things end up quite expensive when you're doing that. So if you've got the opportunity of doing your own version of it, then that's way better than that's way better than paying for something like that. And it's a bit like we're talking about with the code projects. Doing stuff like this is always just for the sake of doing it in some respects. But if you've got a bit of a use case that helps you to learn it then as well. So it's always fun to do that. And I think the smart home stuff is great. When you do your own like this, or take these components, you do learn so much more than just if you buy get a camera off the shelf and a service that's off the shelf. You can tinker around and do a lot more with it. And then you get complaints that you've made it too complicated. You made the house too complicated.
Yeah. But
it is good fun, that.
I mean, I was just thinking, actually, you could take this one step further, and you could actually start using it to do things inside the house. I'm just if I could track if someone was walking down a corridor, we could turn the lights on as they walk down the corridor, because you don't know exactly where they are and all that sort of stuff. So lots of possibilities. Yeah,
that's the kind of thing you think of as a smart home in the future. Not quite got there yet with all these. That's a nice system, that, and rather to pay a monthly subscription, especially when the code's there as well, so you can actually go and have a look at how they've done it as well. It just shows you how far we've come with AI stuff now, isn't it? That it's available on a code project.
Yes, indeed.
And a lot of these projects would need to use some cloud resources, but that's running locally on your machine.
Yeah, totally locally. So it's obviously way less expensive than running it on some of the cloud services. So that's a nice, neat solution, and I suppose a bit more. You're not sending images off over the internet either, are you, to process them? It's all processed locally. Yeah, that's a nice project. I like that. It's it's summertime, to get some projects done, isn't it? Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So, What else did we have for this week? How you get on with your car? Everything?
Oh, the car's going great. So actually, yeah, that's a story I can tell. So went to the EV Festival on Sunday, which is one of the big gatherings of EV owner groups, all the different makes and models of cars. We've got some enthusiasts who want. And one of the things that someone wanted to do there was make coffee for people who are in the EV owners clubs. Unfortunately, where they were located, they had no power. So they just borrowed my car and plugged into it. and we made a lot of coffees during the day and had the machine running from, I think it was 9:30 in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon, solidly plugged into my car. And we lost less than 1% of my battery charge. So it shows that what you could do. We could power the fridge, we could power everything. I mean, this coffee machine was taking just over a kilowatt when it actually was running. So it was quite consuming, and obviously regularly making coffee. So yeah, it's
that's good. Yeah, I suppose that changed things as well. When if you're going on holiday and you're going camping or something, then you've got rather than relying on everything your 12-volt battery, you've got a full 220-volt system, haven't you, that you can go with. So an EV actually makes a good vehicle for doing something like camping, then, wouldn't it? You could charge your laptop up and everything.
Yeah, and if anybody's interested, there's a really good series which one of the caravanning journalists has done. He's got an EV6 like I've got, and he's actually been doing a caravan tour of Scotland using his EV6 to tow his caravan. And he's also done this one video where he actually powers the caravan totally off the EV6 for a night, which is
I suppose a few consumer electronic devices or a laptop and charging your phone is nothing compared to the energy needed for the car. So so it's in fact the car's not really that going to see that much of a drop from it.
No, it's just not. I mean, it's amazing what you could potentially power. I mean, I certainly could power the house for quite some time, and I know people who've had, when there's been power cuts in the street, they've made teas and coffees and run microwaves and cooked the stuff for people in their streets. So yeah, very well. And there's someone else also making tea. So we had someone making tea from an Ionic 5, which is the other vehicle to load on it. We didn't have anybody making mocha, but we did have a mockery box on there. So, but they're good. I mean, a couple of questions I kept getting asked over the weekend was, can you have this vehicle to load on any vehicle? And no, you can't. It's only on ones which are equipped with it. So at the moment, that's the Kia EV6, probably the new Kia Niro. I didn't double check that. The Ionic 5, and funny enough, the cheap MG ZS EV, the new version of that has got a vehicle to load available for it. So I know all those would be great for this sort of thing. But it's definitely a useful thing. I mean, I really hadn't thought of any use for it until that weekend. So that was actually good to sort of, there's no power here, but we can have power here. And that actually makes me think, okay, there's quite a few places I've thought about going on trips to, and where there's no power, but I need power for video cameras and for computers and stuff. And that gives you that option, sort of off-grid lifestyle.
Yeah.
Just charge it up at the start of the week, drive a couple of miles, and then to park up, and then you could spend the whole week just powering, living off your car. And people in South Korea actually do sleep in the EV6 quite regularly. There's a whole camping set of accessories for the EV6 in South Korea, special beds and things. So yeah, it's quite interesting. But that was a really good weekend. Lots of people there, and sort of lots of cool cars and things. So it was good. Couple of really nice conversions of old vehicles.
Did you see I think it was on Top Gear on Sunday, they had a Land Rover Discovery, I think it was, and a Porsche, I think it might have been a 911, but been retrofitted with EVs, and the Land Rover was incredibly fast.
They
off the line. I mean, the initial acceleration was amazing. That Yeah, so it looked really good as well. I mean, the Porsche looked great as well, but yeah, it's great to see a Land Rover Discovery. It was like looking at a bit of an old thing it looked, but then they did a drag race with it and it shot off quicker than the Porsche or anything, because I think power to weight ratio was pretty good. Did you see the car at Goodwood that set the new hill climb record?
Oh, that was brilliant. I love the technologies and the fact it's effectively got a vacuum cleaner to grip, to get down grip on it.
Yeah,
and that was so fast.
Yeah, it's incredible performance in that. I mean, that the idea of the ground effect with the fan dates back to the 80s when the Brabham did it. Gordon Murray did it.
Yeah,
and that's the same concept, isn't it? He creates that aero effect that they're using now in Formula One passively, creating tunnels and things like that to get the ground effect. But this is an active one, isn't it, with a fan?
Yeah.
Amazing acceleration. That's the key, isn't it? But it's faster than I mean, the Formula One car was probably 20 years old, but I think it beat the previous record holder was the VW electric car, wasn't it, that had the Goodwood Hill climb record, but this thing smashed it. It was amazingly fast, and like you said, it's not just a pure energy performance, it was the combination with the ground effects as well. But yeah, amazing to think that in that a relatively short period of time we've got an EV that's faster than a Formula One car in a certain circumstance. But yeah, really, really impressive to see that. So I think Richard enjoyed his trip to Goodwood, saw quite a few of the EV stuff that was there.
Yeah, I'd like to talk to him a bit more about that as well, because there's really, really good stuff there. And of course, the GT version of my car also went up the hill, the super fast version of mine.
Oh yeah.
Yes, so that was interesting to see. Not as fast as the record breaking one, but it's still good.
Yeah. So yeah, it just shows you. So have a look at the Top Gear. You think you're quite impressed with the performance of a Land Rover Discovery. And I think this thing of retrofitting EV into old vehicles is quite. I know it's its own niche thing, but it's quite interesting to see.
I think it's a really good thing to see, and I think it's once they can mass produce that and make it drop in, because I've seen examples. Tata in India actually did this. They basically created an engine block to replace the standard engine block with an EV.
Yep.
So the battery and motor all in it. Now it didn't have a huge range, but it was enough for certainly for some of those cars, and you could imagine sort of some pretty old cars being converted to EVs and suddenly having a complete new lease of life. And as long as the body works fine, you've got a new car effectively.
Yeah, it's great. It was quite interesting to see. So, and you'd surprise a few people if you shot off at the lights in your in your Land Rover.
Well, there's quite a few conversions like that around. I forget which one I was looking at. It might be the 2CV, which has got EV engine, and it goes from 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds.
Yeah,
it's crazy fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that looks good. So yeah, well, I'm glad your vehicle's going all right. I think more and more people are going to be looking at as the fuel ticks over the £2 a litre mark now.
Yeah.
I don't think electricity prices are quite increasing at the same amount.
No, I think that's a definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, they have increased. That's, to be fair. That's
but it's just not the same. Yeah, I just think the way especially once it gets to that £2 mark, when anybody that's looking to change vehicle is really going to look at. Perhaps maybe discounted it before and said, "Oh, it's not something I need to look at." But yeah, when you look at that now, you think, maybe I should look at it, because it makes the calculations a lot easier. I know I went through the exercise and it didn't work. The maths didn't work for me, but every time that ticks up another penny, it makes the decisions a bit easier.
And the other thing is, of course, if you've got something like solar at home, you can offset that power even more, and I've mentioned before, I've invested in the wind farm, and that's paying part of the bills as well. So there's definite ways you can bring that bill down. I mean, it's like the weekend. I mean, I went to Gaydon near Warwick from Peterborough and back, and I did charge, but only to power the coffee machine, and that was only a little bit of charge going in the car. But that whole journey, I think, cost me £7 for the there and back, and power on the coffee machine, and it would have cost an awful lot more on in fuel costs. So crazy. I mean, that's one thing I have definitely noticed in my new car. I charge a lot less. And when I'm charging, it's charged too darn quick. It's always charged before you have a chance to think.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, I think that's it. It's just the further down the line we get, you can just see the math. It makes it easier. Yeah, you can just that you're putting the fuel costs in your Excel spreadsheet, and it's going to tip the balance. So I think a lot of people over the next couple of years are going to be looking. It's just going to increase in popularity, aren't they? Yeah. Maybe we can persuade Richard to put an EV engine into his beloved Golf.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the ID3 is supposed to be a Golf, electric version of a Golf, but there was an e-Golf, which was a really nice car. Actually, I drove that around a test track once. That was quite fun.
Yeah. Well, it's it's good. It amazing how that as ever the technology improves and as we're going along. Now I think that's just about all the topics we had for this week, and we're going to take our summer break next week.
Oh yes, a summer break.
Yeah. So I think we're probably only a week or so, but I think you and Richard will be back the following week, so I'll be away for the 2 shows. And just decided I decided I'm going on holiday, and I think I might be. I'm not sure whether to swap my SIM cards around and leave the Surface Duo at home, because I just think holiday, swimming pools, things, fragility of So I think I might just whack SIM in my old Galaxy and just for the time I'm away, and then keep my, because I still love my Surface Duo, and I want to keep it nice and pristine. And when you're on holiday, there's more of a risk. So I think I'm going to leave my Duo at home and just take the old Galaxy Note and take the. But it's amazing actually when you don't use a phone for some time, how many apps you've got to think. Oh, I need to re-sign back into this, and your 2-factor apps and everything else. It's actually it's not as simple as just picking it up and swapping the SIM. There's a whole lot of stuff you've got to do with it. So I'll be doing that. So we'll be back then Richard probably be back in a couple of weeks. I'll be back after that. Yep. Where can we find you actually in your EV video channel?
My EV video channel is on YouTube. It's called EV Owner, and you can. I've also got a nice little shortcut now called evowner.video. You just need to keep that in your browser window, and I'll go and find it. Or evowner.live if you want. Not that I've actually got any live stuff going at the moment, but they both take you to my site anyway. And also you can find me on Twitter at Gary with 2 R's WMA.
Excellent stuff. So I'm at ISDixon on Twitter. I've got some new tracks as well. So I've done a few. So I'm going to play out with another one. I'm not sure which one I'll play out with yet, but I think. Oh yes, I have. It's a 70s one that I've got for this week. I've been doing a few 80s one, so this is a bit of a 70s one that I'll play out with this week. So we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Brilliant. Take care.